The mirror never moved, and yet sometimes it seemed to breathe. For years, it had hung quietly in the upstairs hallway of the Hanley home, its antique frame dulled with time, its glass clouded in places where no cloth could polish away the haze. Most of the family had stopped noticing it long ago. Most except for Clara. Clara Hanley was 17, restless, and far too curious for her own good. Her younger brother, James, avoided the upstairs hallway altogether, claiming the mirror made him feel heavy inside. Their mother dismissed his fear as childish nonsense, though she herself rarely lingered near it. Their father, well, he had been gone for some time, though no one in the house spoke much about that anymore. It began with small things. Clara would walk past the mirror and think she saw herself blink a fraction too late. Once, she noticed her reflection smiling faintly when she was not. At first, she laughed it off. Fatigue, bad lighting, imagination. But at night, when the house grew still, she would hear faint tapping sounds from upstairs like fingernails gently brushing glass. Then came the whispers. They weren't loud, but they were steady. Low, insistent murmurs seeping through her dreams and curling into her waking thoughts. She could never quite make out the words, but she knew. They came from behind the glass. On the third night, Clara dared to stand before the mirror in the dark, her breath shallow, her pulse hammering. James had been crying in his sleep again, muttering about someone standing in the hallway. Clara leaned closer. This time her reflection didn't lean with her. Clara had always been the one who lingered too long in dark places. She wasn't reckless, just searching. Searching for answers her mother never gave, for traces of a father who had left without a goodbye. The mirror had become a fixation, though she told herself she was only trying to prove James wrong. James, only 11, carried his fear more openly. He avoided the upstairs hallway like a sickness, flinching if Clara teased him into standing before the antique glass. He claimed the shadows inside it moved differently, as though the mirror was a doorway to something watching them. Their mother, weary and sharp-edged since their father's absence, shut down such talk with a cold, "There's nothing there." But she herself always hurried past, eyes fixed anywhere but the glass. The house itself seemed to lean into their unease. Whispers would stir faintly through the walls at night, like a conversation held just beyond hearing. Doors that were locked clicked softly open. James began waking, drenched in sweat, muttering about figures crossing the hallway, their faces hidden, their steps silent. Clara tried to comfort him, though her own nights were haunted by dreams where her reflection pressed its palms against the inside of the mirror, mouthing words she couldn't understand. By day, she caught her reflection glancing at her with expressions she didn't recognize, sadness, sometimes anger, sometimes something colder. When she mentioned it, her mother's lips tightened, and she changed the subject. But Clara noticed her hands trembling afterward, noticed the way she sometimes stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, listening. The Hanleys never spoke of what they all felt, yet silence did not make it less real. And the mirror was waiting. Clara finally confided in her best friend, Leah, the only person she trusted outside the house. Leah, ever the skeptic, laughed at first. Mirrors don't whisper, and shadows don't stare back. But when she came over one evening to prove it, the laughter faded. As the girls stood in the hallway, the air grew heavy, and the old frame rattled softly as though something inside the glass wanted out. Leah's face drained of color, though she quickly blamed old pipes. Still, she didn't stay long. The next day, Mrs. Whitaker from next door stopped Clara in the yard. Her tone was hushed, conspiratorial. "That house, it doesn't keep families. They say others before you left in a hurry. Mirrors, doors, voices, do you hear them?" Clara froze, unsure how to answer. Mrs. Whitaker only muttered, "Be careful, some reflections don't belong to you," before retreating inside. Inside the Hanley home, tension thickened. James insisted something followed him down the hallway, breathing against his neck. Their mother grew brittle, snapping at the children for bringing up nonsense, though her eyes betrayed sleepless nights. Clara, caught between protecting her brother and doubting herself, felt her sanity fray. Objects began shifting places, her schoolbooks stacked neatly on the floor when she'd left them scattered, James's toys arranged in careful patterns he swore he hadn't touched. Once, the bathroom mirror fogged on its own, letters slowly forming across the glass. "Come closer." That night, unable to resist, Clara leaned into the upstairs mirror again. The air was icy, her breath clouding the glass. But when she blinked, her reflection did not. Instead, it lifted its hand and pressed something into the glass. Something small, sharp, and very real. A silver key clinked to the floor at Clara's feet. The house no longer slept. Every night brought footsteps in the empty hallway, heavy and deliberate, pausing just outside bedroom doors. Voices slithered through the vents, whispering Clara's name, James's name, sometimes even their father's. Shadows stretched too long across the walls, bending against the light. The mirror had become impossible to ignore. Its surface rippled faintly, like black water stirred by unseen hands. James refused to go upstairs at all. He slept on the living room floor, clutching his blanket, his eyes wide and hollow. Their mother grew unrecognizable, brittle with exhaustion, shouting at things no one else could see. At breakfast, she once slammed her coffee cup down so hard it shattered. "Stop looking at it!" she screamed, though no one had mentioned the mirror. Clara clung to the key she had found, its silver cold against her skin, though she dared not try it anywhere. Some part of her feared it was meant for a door that should never be opened. The choice pressed harder each day: pack their bags and run, or face what had already claimed the house. But where could they go? Mirrors are everywhere. That night, Clara awoke to the sound of glass creaking, as though under strain. She sat up slowly. The mirror at the end of the hallway was glowing faintly, pale light spilling across the carpet. She could hear James crying downstairs, calling her name. Her reflection was waiting. Only, it wasn't her anymore. The figure inside the glass leaned forward, its mouth stretching into a wide, unnatural grin. The glass shuddered, and then a hand burst through. It wasn't a reflection. It was reaching. The hand withdrew before Clara could scream, vanishing into the rippling glass. But something else remained, a shadowed outline that lingered like smoke, staring at her with a hunger she couldn't name. She staggered back, clutching the silver key, when a voice hissed through the air. It wasn't James's voice. It wasn't her mother's. It was her father's. "Clara," the whisper called, low and broken. "You left me here." Her chest tightened. Her father hadn't abandoned them. He had been taken. The realization struck like ice. The mirror hadn't haunted them because it wanted Clara. It had been feeding on their family for years. Their father had been the first sacrifice. Now it wanted another. She rushed downstairs, desperate to find James, but froze in the doorway. He was standing in front of the living room mirror, his small hand pressed against the glass. His eyes were glazed, lips moving as though answering someone. Their mother stood behind him, watching with eerie stillness, her face pale and unreadable. "Mom?" Clara whispered. Her mother turned, and Clara's blood ran cold. There was no recognition in her eyes, only a dull, empty gleam. "It wants you, Clara," she said softly, almost tenderly. "It always wanted you." Clara's breath caught. The whispers hadn't been random. The nightmares, the shifting objects, the key. It had all been pulling her toward this moment. Her mother's hand trembled as she reached out, not for Clara, but for the mirror. "You'll set us free if you go inside." The glass rippled violently, the reflection grinning wider, arms reaching outward again. This time not for James. For her. Escape was no longer a question. The mirror had already chosen. The walls trembled as if the house itself had drawn breath. The mirror's glow filled the living room, spilling pale light across the floor like a tide of frost. Clara's mother and James stood transfixed, their eyes reflecting the glass as though they already belonged to it. "Come closer," the voice urged, and now Clara heard not one but many, a chorus of the lost, voices overlapping, pleading, accusing. Her father's among them. The silver key burned in her palm. Her instincts screamed to run, but every mirror in the house vibrated in unison, the glass pulsing like living skin. There would be no escape. The figure in the hallway mirror emerged again, Clara's reflection, but wrong. Its movements were smoother, its grin stretched too wide, its eyes full of something ancient. It raised its hand, and instantly James's body lifted from the floor as though pulled by invisible strings. He whimpered, his feet dangling. "Stop!" Clara cried, lunging forward. The reflection tilted its head. Then, impossibly, her mother spoke in unison with it. He was never meant to be the offering. You were. Clara's heart thundered. All the sleepless nights, the whispers, the dreams. They hadn't been warnings. They had been grooming her. The key wasn't meant to protect her. It was meant to unlock her place in the mirror. She raised the key toward the glowing glass, half in defiance, half in desperation. The reflection mirrored her, but in its hand, the key twisted into a jagged blade. Suddenly, the walls cracked, picture frames crashing down, lights flickering. The mirror swelled, its surface pushing outward like a balloon ready to burst. Hands clawed at the inside, dozens of them, pressing against the glass. Clara screamed, shoving the key into the frame. The mirror shrieked, an ear-splitting wail that wasn't sound but vibration, rattling inside her bones. James dropped to the floor. Her mother collapsed, clutching her head. For a moment, Clara thought she had won. The glow dimmed, the surface rippled, the voices faded. Then slowly, the glass cleared. And there she was, herself, standing inside the mirror. But this version wasn't trapped. It was smiling, free, standing on this side. Clara looked down. Her hands were pressing against cold glass. She was inside now. The house was silent. Morning light bled across the broken frames and shattered glass, pale and fragile, as if afraid to touch what remained. James awoke first, lying on the living room rug, his small chest rising in uneven breaths. Their mother stirred beside him, eyes red and hollow, her voice cracked to a whisper. Clara? But Clara was gone. The mirror stood empty now, its surface dull and lifeless, reflecting nothing but the ruined room. The silver key lay twisted on the floor, warped beyond recognition, as if scorched from the inside. No glow, no whispers. Only silence thick enough to choke on. James refused to go near it. He knew his sister was still there, somewhere behind the glass. At night he would sit awake, waiting, hoping to hear her voice. Instead, the mirrors throughout the house remained stubbornly still, their surfaces ordinary. Too ordinary. His mother told him to stop watching, to stop waiting. But her trembling hands betrayed her words. She avoided her reflection altogether, dressing in dim light, brushing her hair in darkness. Life continued, but not untouched. The Hanley home was never warm again, its hallways too empty, its shadows too deep. Neighbors whispered when they passed. Some swore they saw a girl's silhouette lingering in the upstairs window. Mrs. Whitaker muttered prayers under her breath whenever she saw James in the yard. Clara's absence became a wound that never healed, a ghost without form. Sometimes James dreamed of her calling to him, her palms pressed against invisible glass. Sometimes he dreamed of her smiling, warning him to stay away. The mirror curse was broken, or so they told themselves. But broken doesn't always mean gone. And late at night, when James dared to glance too long at the darkened glass of the hallway mirror, he thought he saw her. Not trapped, not pleading, smiling. As though waiting for him to take her place.